Merry Christmas to everyone. So welcome. This is a hot topic this year because we know that as the holidays approach, we women try to do it all. As I was in my living room after baking 9 dozen cookies the other day, actually that's not true. I was in my living room though, wrapping dozens of presents to send out all over the country and thinking about what am I going to have for Christmas dinner, and did I get enough stocking stuffers, and does my hair look okay, and how's my outfit? It's kind of what we women do to ourselves during the holidays. We want everything to be perfect. I know that has always been me. I've aspired to have this wonderful magazine, movie, perfect, Hallmark Christmas. Anybody else tried that? So even if I achieve it, even if I get there and it's kind of like a Hallmark movie, it lasts about 30 minutes in my house. So all of those weeks of preparation, and I admit this, I start buying Christmas presents in July. All of those weeks of preparation and me racking my brains for the best gifts is over in about 30 minutes, and then we watch football. And so it can make us anxious, and sometimes other things happen during the holidays that make us a little sad. It might be that we lost someone, that we're missing somebody in the holidays, that our kids aren't coming home for the holidays, and we experience kind of a depressing or a sad time. So our providers today are here to talk with us about that, to talk to us about the recent developments and studies and the symptoms of depression and things that you may not have thought of that really help when you're going through times of sadness or times of anxiety, or perhaps even both. Before we get started, I would like to introduce Sue Sipple, who is the Executive Director of the Family Center. And so tonight, all of you ladies who were able to bring some shampoo or body lotion, it is going to be a benefit to the Family Center and to those people who come to the center seeking shelter from abusive relationships. And so I'd like to introduce Sue.
Thank you, Nan. I have a short letter that I would like to read to help put a face on the difference that you're going to make in someone's life. So this is from a shelter client many, many years ago. I'm a 49-year-old woman, and I have 2 children and 1 teenage daughter that lives with her father. I recently met a man about 3 years ago. I thought he was the man of my dreams. He was a hard worker from a good family, all the qualities a woman would want. About 2 months into the relationship, he and a friend wanted to go out and party. I protested. He threw Tabasco sauce in my eyes and taped my head with silver duct tape and left. I had to pull my own hair out to get the tape off. Things progressed. I lost all the jobs I had for various reasons, usually related to the abuse. 2 broken noses, several black eyes, stab wounds to my legs. Even though after the beatings he would promise it would never happen again, it did happen again. And the last incident began like many others. I would find myself knocked to the floor, begging and pleading for my life, my ears ringing, face throbbing, and throbbing and swollen, I'm sorry. The kick to the ribs finally brought me to the decision that would save my life. I packed a few things and came to the shelter. It took a couple of days and lots of TLC from staff for me to begin to heal. The broken ribs took longer. Do I still hurt? Yeah. I'm not sure what hurts the most, the physical or the emotional pain. They both take a long time to heal. In the meantime, I'm looking for work, feeling good about myself as a person and a woman. I was given a voucher for some new clothes, and I have makeup and perfume and even earrings, none of which I was allowed to have because I wasn't worth it. Guess what? I am worth it. I'm no longer a victim, thanks to the staff here. I'm a survivor. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. So I'd like to thank you for playing a part in helping a survivor like this woman feel like they're worth it. Thank you.
to all of you. As I've said before, I believe that aspiring women inspire others to give. I'd like to just read a few things to you about that I found out about depression and share them with you. I myself have had trouble with depression, especially after the birth of both of my boys, and remember how difficult and isolated I felt. And so these are 10 facts or some 10 pieces of information that I thought you might appreciate. One of the things you should know is that depression is an illness and that it pays no attention to your age, your sex, your race, or your socioeconomic status. Anyone, anywhere can develop it. Depression can be hereditary. Research shows that depression does run in families. If your primary relative, such as a parent or a sibling, suffered from major depression, then you are 1.5 to 3 times more likely to develop this illness. Depression can be situational. Situational depression typically occurs as a result of a traumatic life experience. For instance, emotionally painful situations in a person's life, including divorce, death of a loved one, financial difficulties, unemployment, illness, loss of a home, etc. Depression is part of bipolar. Bipolar illness is a mood disorder characterized by periods of extreme highs, known as mania, and extreme lows, known as depression. Research has shown that 20% of adolescents with depression develop bipolar within 5 years of the onset of major depression. Depression does distort thinking. One of the most alarming symptoms of depression is cognitive distortions. Depression affects the frontal lobe of the brain, which is responsible for executive functioning, including reasoning and problem solving. When these areas in the brain become diminished in their functioning, a person's negative thoughts become internalized truisms. Depression does occur in children. Childhood is supposed to be a time of joy, but for some kids, it's anything but if depression strikes. Depression can and does affect children. Those especially vulnerable come from chaotic homes where one or more parent also suffers from depression. Depression is often overlooked in the elderly. Depression in those over the age of 65 years old is frequently overlooked and undertreated because of the coexistence of other late life maladies. These may include dementia, diabetes, hypertension, and anemia. Depression can be fatal. Depression left untreated can and does result in fatalities. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death for all age groups. Depression has a contagious effect. Research shows, health experts, that those who are in close contact with depressed persons are more likely to develop depressive symptoms themselves. And depression is stigmatized. Research indicates that the negative stereotypes towards those affected by mental illness are rampant. Labels such as crazy and mental are commonplace. Depression is often seen as a character defect of laziness. And depression can be treated. The good news is that depression can be successfully treated. The sooner it is treated, the better the prognosis, and the less chance there is for relapse. So today, oh my goodness, thank goodness for Tammy, who keeps me safe. I almost forgot to introduce Liz McCodlow, who is here to talk about You Are What You Eat, and why the foods you ate tonight benefit your mood.
So sorry, Liz. I even had you on the agenda.
Welcome, everyone. Just want to say a few words about the refreshments, because as always, the food that we prepare for you to taste reflects the theme of the evening. So, the key question is, can eating certain foods really help prevent bad moods? What do you think? I hope so too. The scientific community is still researching just what effect foods have on our moods, but we do know that diet can change our brain structure and the chemistry, which may lead to changes in behavior. So there are some things that we can do to be in the mood. And one of the easiest things to do is to eat a breakfast every day. And some of the most healthy foods are foods that are selenium rich, and that can be toast and eggs. So you can do double duty by eating breakfast as well as including selenium rich foods at that breakfast. Other things, and one of them is yogurt, which was in a couple of the different refreshments that you enjoyed today. Other selenium-rich foods are albacore tuna, Brazil nuts, brown rice, and cottage cheese. We also want to boost serotonin levels, and lean protein foods as well as healthy carbohydrates can improve those serotonin levels. So avoiding carbs altogether is not a really recommended choice to make. What food do most women turn to when they're feeling a little down? Chocolate. Okay. We're talking about dark chocolate. We're talking about cocoa-rich chocolate. We're not talking about M&Ms. We're not talking about Snickers or any other type of just milk chocolate bar. We're talking about true cocoa chocolate. Your brownies today had cocoa in them as well as yogurt. So double duty there. Again, the message is though, eat a good variety of foods. Foods from all the different food groups, and you'll be doing yourself something good. Enjoy the program tonight. Thank you, Larry.
So I've been trying to figure out if there is a diet out there that's a carbohydrate chocolate diet. I can do that. I have great pleasure in introducing our presenters tonight. It is Dr. Derek Kestila and Natalie Schwab. They are married. They just got married this past summer. They actually served their residency in Pittsburgh at University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, which is where they met. They joined us in Wisconsin River about a little over a year ago, July of last year. I had the pleasure of giving them a tour of the hospital and convincing them that Rapids was the place that they wanted to locate to. So, success, just saying. They also own together 3 cats. One is a new addition. His name is Gene, and he's called Mean Gene, which I think is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And they also have Benny and the Jet and one other kitty. Denver. I think all of those names have meaning. So our first presenter is Dr. Kestila. He is a doctor of osteopathic medicine specializing in family practice with Aspirus Doctors Clinic in Wisconsin Rapids. He received his medical degree from Midwestern University in Arizona and was the chief resident during his residency program at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. As a primary care physician, Dr. Kestila routinely evaluates and treats mood disorders and is well versed in risk factors, warning signs, and the effective referral and therapies. He joined Aspirus Doctors Clinic in July of 2016 and is welcoming new patients. He is a member of the Physician Executive Committee at Aspirus Riverview Hospital, and along with his wife, nurse practitioner Natalie Schwab, founded the Aspirus Doctors Clinic Journal Club, serving as the club's physician director. Just want to warn you ladies, he grew up in Minnesota. You know what that means, right? Oh! We're accepting. We are accepting of diversity, aren't we, ladies? It's the holidays, you need to be generous. Excellent point. After Dr. Kestila presents, his lovely wife Natalie will present. She is a nurse practitioner who specializes in family practice with Aspirus Doctors Clinic. She earned a doctorate of nursing practice degree from Robert Morris University in Pennsylvania and is board certified by the American Association of Nurse Practitioners. She's passionate about evidence-based medicine and women's health. As a primary care provider, she frequently evaluates and treats mood disorders in her practice. She values holistic care, maintaining and restoring the body, mind, and spirit, and you'll hear more about that tonight. She also joined Aspirus in 2016 and is accepting new patients. She serves as the reference service section liaison and event coordinator. She she should be working with me. I like to do events for the Aspirus Doctors Clinic Journal Club. I don't think she's a Vikings fan, but she might be a Steelers fan.
Yes.
I was afraid that was true. So without further ado, let me turn the mic over to Dr. Kestila.
All right, can everybody hear me all the way in the back there? Is this okay? All right. So thank you so much for having both Natalie and myself here tonight. Really hope that you guys kind of brave the cold, and hopefully you guys will learn a little something about the talk tonight. Sounds like you guys get to try some good food, and then you guys hopefully enjoy learning a little bit about probably not the most uplifting topic, but certainly something that I think is important, especially this time of the year. So we'll start out, since we kind of let the cat out of the bag, that I'm a Vikings fan. This is a picture of Aaron Rodgers, who I heard is coming off, or already off the injured reserve, and should be back on the field coming up next Sunday. But this is a picture of him when he was injured when he played the Vikings this year. So you guys might have had some feelings of despair, sadness, anger, husband, son, maybe in some of the hardcore Packer fans or owners that are out there, may have had a wide range of emotions during and after the game. Did these emotions last for 2 weeks or longer? Is this an example of depression? How do you know? Maybe anxiety for some other people. And then, of course, a disclaimer that I was born and raised in Minnesota. I'm a Vikings fan. That my emotions may have been a little on the other side of the spectrum. So in total, we're going to discuss 4 of the common mood disorders and some of the important features of each, finishing up with treatment. And then after that, I'll hand things over to my beautiful blushing bride, who will chat about a treatment option for each treatment. So why is this an important topic? Depression is more common in females, especially in ages 40 to 59. It is the most common mood disorder. Mood disorders can worsen chronic illnesses, disrupt interpersonal relationships, increase risk for substance abuse problems, result in lost work time and earnings, and most importantly, can definitely affect your quality of life. So lifetime occurrence for mood disorders and bipolar disorder is about 1% of the population. Seasonal affective disorder is 5%. Anxiety disorders is around 16%. And major depression disorder is 25%. So have I really kind of caught your guys' attention with this and how common these are? So another way to kind of go through this, and we'll go back to kind of the Packers and back to Lambeau Field. So if you had the whole crowd full of Lambeau Field, about had 1 in every 4 people in the crowd were Vikings fans. That would be everyone that has depression in their lifetime. 1 in 6 would be Bears fans. That would be anxiety. And then 1 in 20 would be Lions fans, because probably not a lot of Lions fans out there. So that would be seasonal affective disorder. And so that kind of gives you an idea of what the impact would be for those disorders in your lifetime. And then kind of a better way to look at it too is kind of the total individuals that are affected at any given time in the U.S. population. It's called prevalence. And major depression is about 6.7% or 16.1 million. And if you look at type 2 diabetes, it's about 9% of the U.S. population at any given time, which is around 29 million. So definitely something that's out there that is recognized and is something that you definitely look out for. So we know that women are looking to be engaged within their families and social circles. Some of these emotions and symptoms might be something that you're personally dealing with, or someone that's close to you, a family member, friend, or colleague might have some of these symptoms going on that we're going to talk about. And really we just encourage you to talk to your doctor or healthcare provider, really to kind of go over your moods and when to be concerned. And definitely encouraging others to do the same as well. So what are your typical moods and emotions? So everyone has highs and lows in their lives. We've all had bad days, instances of anxiety, depressed mood. Sometimes can be emotionally labile. But for most people, this doesn't really cause a problem with your everyday activities. So it's not typical to have thoughts interfering with your daily activities, feelings of worthlessness or despair, crying and no interest in those daily activities. Not typical to have panic attacks or anxiety, causing someone to really miss out on social events or activities at school or work. And then also not being able to complete tasks due to depression. So we're going to discuss some of the normal time periods for some of these everyday emotions and really kind of try to recognize when to start being concerned. So who is at risk for mood disorders? Really anyone that's kind of suffering from these types of episodes. Stressful life events, job loss, death of a loved one, family struggles. Everyone really reacts differently to stressful situations, and it can definitely trigger a wide range of emotions. Prior episodes of depression or anxiety, 72% of people who have had a previous depression episode will have a second occurrence in their lifetime. So being able to recognize these episodes can definitely help in the future as well. Recent childbirth, childhood trauma, substance abuse disorder, chronic pain disorder, and then other medical conditions can lead to chronic mood changes, including fibromyalgia, cancer, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and Crohn's disease. And thyroid disorder is one of the special ones out there that can definitely worsen depression or anxiety too. So moods are directed by your brain chemistry. So when neurotransmitters are not in balance, the feel-good chemicals are decreased in your brain synapses, and we need to rebalance those brain chemicals. And the most common chemicals that are out of balance are serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine. If I can figure out the laser pointer here. So this is kind of a nice picture to kind of talk about, how the brain and mood chemistries are. And then it kind of really correlates well with this other picture on the other side. And this is what we call a functional MRI. So this is a healthy brain, and this is a brain that has depression. And if you notice that really on the front part of here, that's called the frontal cortex, doesn't light up as well in a depressed brain. And the functional, or the frontal cortex is really the area that regulates our thoughts and emotions. And so when that isn't functioning properly, it really causes us to not be able to regulate our emotions, can't control, recognize when we're having depression or anxiety, and doesn't really allow us to function properly. Anxiety, on the other hand, actually causes a hyperarousal state in certain sections of the brain. So this functional MRI picture would look a little bit different with anxiety. Then treatments, which we'll discuss later, really help to kind of rebalance some of these neurotransmitters and the chemicals in the brain in order to stimulate them and rebalance them. So before we kind of move on to the mood disorders, I'm sure you guys have probably all had holiday parties throughout the month of December, and I heard a pretty good joke at one of our Christmas parties earlier, so I figured that it would be a good time to pop this in here. So why was Santa's little helper depressed? Anybody have any idea? So the answer is that, what?
Low self-esteem.
Yes.
So he was short on self-esteem. She must have heard the joke already. All right, so the first one disorder that we'll talk about is major depression disorder. It's depressed mood or loss of interest or pleasure in activities that were previously enjoyable. And one of these first two things has to be present in order to be a major depression episode. Some of the common symptoms that we see are sleep disturbance, weight changes, fatigue, crying episodes, feeling helpless, hopeless, or worthless. Some of the other symptoms can be difficulty concentrating, angry outbursts, and people will also feel guilty about their thoughts and moods. At least 2 weeks of symptoms occurring each day can be longer as well, and symptoms that just last a few days aren't something that we qualify as major depression. Some people also have physical complaints that occur during their mood changes as well, such as headaches, abdominal pain, back pain, and some other ones. We call those somatic complaints. And when those happen, those can be a manifestation of depression as well. So it's important that you kind of discuss all the symptoms that you're having when you are seeking help. Symptoms can cause significant impairment in social life, school activities, in the workplace, or at home. Can lead to missed work days, missing social activities, and also can become unlikely to leave the house, and isolation can result from this. So just a reminder that this is the most common mental health disorder seen in primary care offices, so it's important to be honest when you're discussing this with your physician or your PCP. The next one that we're going to talk about is generalized anxiety disorder. Some of the common symptoms include feeling restless, anxious, easy fatigue, sleep disturbance, where you're either worrying or staying up throughout the night with your sleep, concentration difficulty, irritability, and muscle tension. And 3 of those first 6 have to be present. Other symptoms can include constant worrying, dread, exaggerated startle response, and being easily distracted. And then similar to depression, you can also have physical complaints. And that's kind of this kind of frazzled guy down here in the corner kind of outlines some of those physical complaints, including palpitation, sweating, choking sensation, difficulty swallowing, vision changes, nausea, and headaches. And generalized anxiety disorder is typically present for at least 6 months, more days than not each week. And again, symptoms can affect your school, your work, your home life in a negative way, really leading to a disturbance in your functioning life. Anxiety disorder can also have coexisting panic attacks with many of the above symptoms, but with much more severe and short episodes resulting in these panic attacks. Just as an aside, typically depression tends to focus on past events, whereas anxiety tends to cause worry about future events. So that's kind of another way to kind of delineate and figure out really what's going on with your moods as well. All right, so the next one that we're going to talk about is seasonal affective disorder. And it's a type of depression that has a seasonal pattern, so it has the same symptoms that we mentioned before about depression with the depressed mood, loss of enjoyment in activities, crying, sleep changes, and weight changes, and then also having feelings of hopelessness and worthlessness. Symptoms have to last 2 weeks or more, same as depression. And one of the interesting things with seasonal affective disorder is that it actually has cravings for food, specifically carbohydrate-rich foods. So that's one of the markers of seasonal affective disorder. Occurs at the same time each year for 2 or more years, and most often it's in a fall to winter pattern and occurs in higher latitude locations, which Wisconsin is a higher latitude state, so definitely we'll see that with that. The theory behind seasonal affective disorder is that it's related to decreased daylight that occurs with the seasonal changes that really predisposes people to depression and mood changes. And we will discuss this when we highlight the treatment options later. Without treatment, symptoms tend to improve in the springtime or the summer with the seasonal changes as well. The next one is bipolar disorder, which Nan mentioned earlier. Bipolar disorder is a cycling between major depression and mania episodes. Some of the mania symptoms include significant change in mood, high levels of energy where you feel like you're very restless or really have to do a lot of different things, a decreased need for sleep, impulsive risk-taking activities, and delusional grandiose thoughts. Some of the risk-taking activities can include foolish business adventures, spending sprees, sexual infidelity, drug use, or reckless driving. Manic episodes can progress quickly over a few days and last weeks to months at a time. Cycling between the manic grandiose thoughts and depression can really take its toll over time, with increased risk for legal troubles, violence, incarceration, and self-harm. So, what can really happen with severe depression? Even someone that can make you laugh and cry all at once can be hiding feelings deep inside of depression and thoughts of suicide. Self-harm and suicide can happen to even the strongest and successful individuals. any of us can really be affected by it. And you guys probably recognize Robin Williams on here, and he unfortunately did suffer from depression and did commit suicide back in 2014. And this is just a quote from him about, I think the saddest people always try their hardest to make people happy because they know what it's like to feel absolutely worthless, and they don't want anybody else to feel like that. So some of you might know firsthand some really strong individuals that have attempted suicide in the past, and it's really just something that we encourage people to really reach out for help. So suicide risk and prevention. So thoughts of hurting yourself or others is more common with depression, anxiety, seasonal affective disorder, and bipolar disorders. Anxiety doubles the risk of suicide, and anxiety that coexists with depression increases the risk by 5 times or more. 10 to 15% of bipolar sufferers die from suicide. Hopelessness is the biggest predictor of suicide attempts, and social support and family connectedness can be protective against it. So really being able to recognize worsening moods is important and can be indicators to get help soon. And many times people aren't able to recognize these changes and may need the help and counsel of others to really get that, get to where they need to be. Women attempt suicide more often, and men are more successful with their attempts. So we do have some local resources. There are crisis hotlines locally in Marshfield and Wisconsin Rapids with the numbers up here. There is a suicide prevention lifeline, which is a national network. Pretty easy to remember. It's the 1-800-273-TALK, and they have therapists and different people that can help you over the phone. Calling your physician's office to discuss symptoms or thoughts of self-harm is important, and also going to the emergency room for immediate help. So it's really important to know that there are places to get help and people that can and want to help. No one is in a hopeless or helpless situation. It just might feel that way because the brain is changing or having those feelings that can become overwhelming. Treatment is available when needed, and it's not necessarily lifelong. So how do we treat depression? Some of the really easy things that we can start doing right away is lifestyle changes. Exercise, yoga, deep breathing techniques, getting a small amount of exercise each day can definitely be a mood booster for people. Good sleep hygiene, which is really maximizing your sleep quality, going to bed at the same time each night, sleeping in a quiet, dark room, turning off your TV, kind of setting a sleep schedule and avoiding alcohol and food late at night can all help with that as well. A healthy diet, you guys try some of those healthy foods that are out there, getting those selenium-rich and serotonin-rich foods really help to fuel your body. And when we eat right, our body and mind can be more efficient and think more clearly. Participating in enjoyable activities and hobbies can really help to clear your minds, not think about the negative parts of your life, and can help to emphasize things that are enjoyable and that you find joy in doing. Connecting with family, having a good family support system is important, can be really helpful when you're having those mood changes, and also helps to prevent isolation, which can be potentially harmful. Avoiding alcohol, drugs, and tobacco, and really kind of doing all these things in combination can really have good positive mood boosting effects, help to change those brain chemistry, all those chemicals that are out of balance in the brain. And these can actually be started as early as you start to have any type of symptoms. So really kind of reevaluating things, kind of seeing what changes you can make in your life can really have a good positive effect on your mood boosting abilities as well. So what are some of the further treatment options out there? Professional help is something that myself and Natalie are here today to kind of know that there are people out there. Medications is one of the things that I'm sure we probably hear a lot about. There are some medications that tailor more towards anxiety. There are some that will tailor more towards depression. Then SSRIs, which are the serotonin receptor, SNRIs, TCAs, all those can definitely help. It is important to know that bipolar has its own medications. And so definitely, something that is a little different than the anxiety and depression part of it. Cognitive behavioral therapy is something that's just as effective as medications. This is where you have the help of a therapist or a psychiatrist, and they lead you through a treatment process, which includes kind of recognizing that perceptions of reality are false. False perceptions can lead to negative thoughts. So you kind of train yourself to learn to identify these negative thoughts as soon as they enter your mind, and replacing them with alternatives, and then finally reframing your central beliefs about the world and yourself as well. There's also hypnosis, and the last one is a light therapy for seasonal disorder. So this is what we call an artificial light for seasonal disorder, seasonal affective disorder. And it's something that you would put in your office or in your home, and it stimulates that natural light in order to really help kind of boost your mood, because that's one of the things that they see with depression in the winter time, is that it's not enough sunlight. You can also use a dawn simulator light, which is one that you put in your bedroom. It actually starts to kind of bring extra light into your room early in the morning to really help boost your mood, and it kind of helps with your moods throughout the day. We also recommend getting outside during lunch breaks, on the weekends, anytime where you can be outside and really getting that good daylight hours can also be helpful. And kind of going back to the Christmas theme, how many of you guys have seen the National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation? I've probably seen that. You know the part where Clark Griswold is hanging up all the Christmas lights and everything. I think he's probably doing that because he's probably trying to help his neighbors out with seasonal affective disorder. They get a lot of light command. So I think that's an important part of the movie too, is to recognize that even the Griswolds are trying to help out with it. So mindfulness and meditation is the next part of the talk, and that's a very good treatment option. And we're going to turn that over to Natalie, and she's going to talk to you guys about that. And then after she's done, we'll answer some questions that you guys have, and we'll go from there.
Make sure no timers.
No timers.
No timers. No whammies, no whammies. Last week, thank you, Dr. Kestila. Thank you so much, Nan, for those wonderful introductions and for all that important, those 10 facts that she presented are really very insightful and important. And I think, what obviously Dr. Kestila presented this evening is hopefully very useful to you all in knowing what you can look for. And he took something away from it. I always take something valuable from him. Usually his sense of humor is something I get. Thank you all for attending this evening. We're really grateful for all of you coming. And I got the opportunity to speak with some of you this evening, and I can tell we have a pretty great group out there. So, thanks for coming. When Dr. Kessler and I were approached about this presentation, we welcomed the opportunity to be able to speak on such an important topic, and also introduce ourselves to our community. So, as we've said, we are married. Let's see if I don't mess this up. All right. So if you're questioning, are they Mr. and Mrs.? They have different names. We are. So before we jump right in, just wanted to share we got married on June 10th of this year. And it took a village. We got married here in Wisconsin Rapids at Bullseye Country Club, and it was really beautiful. So we were grateful to everyone for all their help and just becoming a member of such a really lovely community. But we were here to talk about anxiety and depression. It's obviously very important. Anxiety and depression can have a negative impact on mental health, physical health, and can cause long-term disability and worse. But I also want to keep it a little bit lighthearted. So in the spirit of wedded bliss, I'm going to be asking some questions throughout the evening, and I would like for you to respond with, I do, so we're going to practice. 1, 2, 3. I do. All right, we're all paying attention. So the first question is a doozy. It's very important, so I hope you've all paid very close attention. And the first question is, how many of you know about the Ace Hardware in Wisconsin Rapids? I do. I love that store. I bought this sign. I had to have it. Okay, I saw it. We've only been married for 6 months. We just got a call from Derek's parents on our 6-month anniversary. I was like, do they celebrate that? Are we supposed to celebrate? I didn't know. No one told me. Isn't a year enough? Anyway, if you can't read it, it says marriage is like a deck of cards. In the beginning, all you need is 2 hearts and a diamond. And by the end, you wish you had a club and a spade, right? Okay, but anxiety and depression. In a little while, I'm going to share some secrets to optimizing your health that I'm absolutely passionate about. And current research supports as statistically significant for overall health and well-being. But first, what do we know about depression and anxiety? Well, globally, more than 3 million people of all different ages suffer. And we've talked about children, adults, elderly, often misdiagnosed as a result. 16 million people, 16 million adults in the US alone as of 2012. Many people with depression also suffer from anxiety. Usually we call it a comorbid condition. In other words, they are together hand in hand. More women typically than men. What else do we know? Depression was the leading cause of disability in the world in 1990 and is expected to be the second leading cause of disability in 2020, beat out only by cardiovascular disease, so heart attacks. And it's strongly linked to suicide as the leading cause, depression is, and the rates of major depression in the US doubled in the decade from 1991 to 2001, from 3.3 to 7.06. And that increase is of considerable consequence because it's associated with significant morbidity, which is another word for disease, disability, increased medical comorbidities, in other words, other diseases, and mortality or death. There is a rapidly growing body of evidence that stresses, negative emotions, including depression and anxiety, have adverse effects on our psychological systems that are vital for our physical health and for healing. It increases our susceptibility to worsening outcomes and a wide range of physical illnesses, and it can even shorten our lifespan. So you might be asking yourself, well, what are the causes of depression and anxiety? And as you can see, the pie chart illustrates that there is a genetic link, 1/3 genetic link, and Nan talked about how family members, you can know how you're statistically significant and more likely to get anxiety and depression as a result of that. But 2/3 is environmental factors, which is huge. So some of you might be saying, well, what does environmental factors mean? So we're ready for another I do question. How many of you here remember planning your wedding? Was it stressful or was it just me? Right? Lots of stress. Obviously the holidays, right? We're right on the cusp of Christmas, and many of us, I'm sure, aren't ready. And like Nan, we want to have the best Christmas for our families, and we just kill ourselves trying to get everything perfect and make sure we get everybody the perfect gift and that we have all the foods that they love. And, you know, it's also a time for some people to not get to spend with their families, or they may realize they don't have much to give. And so it's a time where a lot of people are impacted by the environment around them, our work, our children, our homes, the life, the birth and death of a family member, gaining or losing income. It's life and it happens. So we've all experienced our circumstances change, and I'm sure we all have that in common. But relax, nothing is under control, right? So sometimes our circumstances change for the better, and sometimes for the worse. A certainty in life is that circumstances will change. It's easy to have peace and be full of happiness when those circumstances change for the better, but what happens when they change for the worse? Are your physical, mental, and spiritual tanks full? As you can see, the word up there, dukkha, means suffering exists. It's not dookie, it's dukkha. And that is a Buddhist philosophy term. And the reason I put that on there is that we'll be kind of touching base a little bit on those kind of techniques for mindfulness and meditation. But you might be asking in the meantime, well, what does she mean by filling my physical, mental, and spiritual tanks? The healing professions have long recognized that a person is the product of a dynamic interaction between the body, the mind, and the spirit, and that all three must be considered to maintain or to restore health. And as healing professionals, we of course respect all forms of religion and spirituality. So it should not come as a surprise that the vast majority of research is on mental health. And there's good news. For those of you who are feeling a little bit low in your tanks for physical, mental, and spirituality, there are effective treatments for depression and anxiety. So if you're experiencing any of the signs and symptoms of the depression or anxiety that Dr. Kestila reviewed with you, you certainly can reach out and speak with your healthcare provider. That's what we're here for. So what are the treatment options? There's psychological treatments, there's antidepressant medications, and there's some alternatives. I've touched a few of them there. Psychological treatments include behavioral modification, cognitive behavioral therapy, interpersonal psychotherapy. Antidepressant medications, I've listed 3 groups, there are others. SSRIs, which are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SNRIs, and tricyclic antidepressants. And alternatively, religion and spirituality, along with medicine and healthcare, have been related in one way or another in all populations since the beginning of recorded history. It wasn't really until the early 1900s when Sigmund Freud did a series of literature works that the two were separated. But current evidence continues to reflect the importance of promoting spirituality and religion and spiritual health as part of the whole person. And tonight that's what I'm going to focus a lot of the conversation on, is the alternative treatments. One specific cognitive behavioral therapy that is mindfulness-based cognitive behavioral therapy, and religion and spirituality. And you might be asking yourself, well, why is she focusing on these therapies? It's not because I don't think the other ones are important, they certainly are, and we certainly do have very effective medications and alternative therapies, but this is, there have been several large-scale studies reporting the efficacy and effectiveness of the currently available antidepressants and cognitive behavioral therapy are unacceptably low. Not that they aren't effective, but that we want to have more and alternative treatments. So we need alternative solutions, and these are therapies anyone can do and start doing today, and studies show are as effective as medication therapy. We also know as doctors and nurses that religious and spiritual beliefs and practices are commonly used both in medical and psychiatric illnesses for patients to cope with their illness and stressful life changes. A large volume of the research shows that people who are more religious and spiritual have better mental health and adapt more quickly to health problems than those people who are less religious and spiritual. So taking a look on the PowerPoint presentation, you can see a number of different areas of our health that can be affected by religion and spirituality. There is a lot of evidence that religion and spirituality beliefs and behaviors are associated with more positive emotions, fewer negative emotions, fewer emotional disorders, and fewer substance abuse problems. The benefit of good mental health and well-being also impact your physical health, as you can clearly see on this slide. And they affect the risk of getting disease and your response to treatments. Strong positive social support can also influence relationships with physical health. Well, what's the evidence for this, right? If there's a positive effect on religion and spirituality, certainly we would see it in mortality or in our lifespan and our death rate. What you can see here is over 121 studies in a literature review show that 68% found people who were greater religious or spiritually oriented were predicted to have greater longevity. Of those studies, they took the most rigorous studies, and 75% were found that greater religion and spiritually affiliated people had greater longevity. And as an aside, they found that people who more frequently attended religious services increased the longevity on average of 37%. This is a significant amount because it would be equivalent to me putting a patient who is at risk for cardiovascular disease and stroke on a statin medication, or my post-heart attack patient, I would send them to cardiac rehab and extend their life as a direct result, which is why we as providers really do anything that we recommend for our patients is to promote your health and extend your life and lessen the impact of disease. And you might ask yourself, well, how does spirituality and religion do that? There's 3 pathways. There are more than 3, but these are the 3 main pathways: psychological, social, and health behavior. Many religious organizations and many people who are spiritual often learn coping mechanisms as a result of that connectedness with a higher power or with their spirituality. Additionally, religion often permeates negative events with meaning or with purpose, and so typically impacting your overall mental health for the positive and lessening the blow of something negative, therefore lessening mental depression or anxiety and improving your overall physical health. Socially, you have greater social support. You see more altruism, which is volunteering. You see more communication. For example, if your husband was sick and you were sick and now your child is sick, you're a member of a religious organization and you could call one of those friends and say, you know, I can't take Sally to the hospital and she's very ill, my husband and I are ill, and that friend would come and help you. If you wouldn't have had that connection, you may not be able to get Sally to get the help that she needs in a timely fashion. So you can see that social capital is gained as a result, and you can kind of connect the dots between how that can impact your overall physical health. And then health behaviors. Oftentimes your decisions about your health are emphasized as a personal accountability to care for your body, and additionally harmful behaviors are typically discouraged. So recent evidence is reaffirming that the connection between overall health and religion and spirituality is there. And so you might say, well, what does this have to do with mindfulness and meditation? Well, according to current evidence-based research, mindfulness-based interventions have been effectively combined with cognitive behavioral therapy and used for those suffering with depression and anxiety. They saw moderate improvements in depression and anxiety in 47 studies that had over 3,500 participants who used the mindfulness-based cognitive behavioral therapy and stress reduction therapies. So the one study on Western mindfulness concluded that the mindfulness-based cognitive behavioral therapy is a cost-effective approach for the treatment of depression, particularly in cases of recurrent depression. So which one are you? Are you mindful or are you mindful? So are you the dog? The dog looks pretty happy up there, right? Are you enjoying that walk, or are you thinking about all of the millions of things that you have to get done for Christmas right now, right? So in order to understand the mindfulness-based cognitive behavioral therapy process that focuses on teaching individuals to become aware of their negative, ruminating thought patterns, you should understand the underlying philosophy. They base this on Buddhist philosophy, which usually focuses on what you see there, the Four Noble Truths. There's that word again, dukkha, suffering exists. Attachment to desire is the origin of dukkha. Cessation of dukkha is possible, and the Noble Eightfold Path is the key to cessation of dukkha. Well, what's the Noble Eightfold Path? Well, we won't get into all of Buddhist philosophy, but to kind of summarize it, it's focusing on the right view of understanding the Four Noble Truths, and additionally, focusing right efforts to detect early warning signs of mood change and develop strategies to stop ruminating thoughts and avoid reacting to negative thoughts. So how do you stop ruminating on it? Well, they have you focus on replacing the negative thought with a compassionate thought. Recognize that you have these negative thoughts and they create pain. Distract yourself from the thoughts that are too difficult to change, and examine what led to these negative thoughts and recognize the strength and resiliency to overcome the thought. The overall takeaway is that one must not take negative thoughts personally, because the brain is conditioned to view experiences unreliably, permanently, and personally. A more favorable approach would be to simply acknowledge the unpleasant experience as simply something that is unpleasant at that moment in time, and the strategy would be to focus reframing thoughts and experiences that are linked to negative emotions to improve that thought process into positive emotions. And as you can see, and a simple example of reframing negative thinking would be to meditate or focus on positive things. So in Christian theology, you see a verse from Philippians shows that they focus on whatever is true, whatever is noble, right, pure, lovely, and admirable. Anything is excellent or praiseworthy, focus on these things. And as you can see in this verse from Thessalonians, they focus, or give another example that encompasses holistic care, studying to be quiet, to mind your own business, and to work with your hands. So body, mind, and spirit summarized in one verse. Despite the fact that spiritual content was removed from this study in order to just train people on how to be mindful and meditate, you can see that a majority of studies show significant relationships between religion and spirituality and better health, and I think you can see why based on those two religions we reviewed. There are many other religions, obviously. So you might be asking, well, I mean, really, does this really change anything in me? And the answer is yes. Actually, the study showed that the results of mindfulness and meditation did change the prefrontal cortex of the brain. So that if you can kind of take your memory back to Dr. Kestila's slide with the MRI brain scan, and those chemical changes in the brain actually lit up differently afterwards. The gray matter, or the front part of the brain, highly developed, as Nan was saying, in humans, it regulates complex thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, and mindfulness did transform brain segments that affected focus, body awareness, empathy, emotion learning and regulation, tactile information processing, and memory, reducing cortisol levels during times of stress. So ultimately, it calmed depression and anxiety, it improved the participants' blood pressures, decreased their substance abuse, increased their ability to stay focused and block distraction. Wouldn't we all like that? And it reduced cortisol level during stressful times, and it potentially reduced the signs of aging and improved sleep. So you might be saying, well, how do I achieve a mindfulness meditation therapy at home? And as you can see, removed from the study, and again, foundation of Buddhist template on how to meditate, there's 4 very simple steps on what to do. And although it looks very simple, I can promise you that like anything, it does require some practice. If any of you have ever sat in a room quietly for a moment, hasn't felt like an eternity. Usually if you think about, you know, your children, when you punish them and put them in timeout, how long can they sit there? Not very long, right? Because it feels like forever. But essentially, to achieve focused concentration, you would become aware of your breathing. And as you sit there quietly, you become aware of everything else that's around you as well. And also these thoughts that kind of creep in. And so when you become aware that your mind has drifted off, you leave the thoughts there. Again, easier said than done. Oftentimes we ruminate, we latch onto the thought, and we kind of trail into criticizing or planning. But what this suggests is that you just acknowledge, I'm having this thought, and I let it go as easily as it comes, and I return my focus to my breathing, feeling myself breathe in through my nostrils, filling my lungs and my belly, and relaxing my body, and feeling myself exhale. It's that simple, and it's that challenging, but it's also that rewarding. So which one are you in this picture? Are you the one carrying all of the guilt and all of the past regrets and grievances? Or are you the one that's focusing on all the tension and stress and worry about what's going to happen in the near future? Or are you the guy in the middle that's just being present and being still? Obviously, for some people, having some kind of background noise can help them. Some of you lucky members will get to take home a meditation, classical music CD with you, and some other members will also take home guided meditation applications for their phone. It's called Simply Being. It's a wonderful meditation app, guided meditation app that I do recommend. It's maybe $1.99 if you do have access to that on your phone. I do recommend it, but certainly you can use any kind of nature noises or any kind of music that you would like to listen to, whatever you kind of need to help you to focus and just still your mind in the moment. So that is it. Thank you, ladies, very much. You've been a wonderful audience. And we obviously have our meditating dog, and we'd love to know if you have any questions. Don't be shy. We welcome questions. In the back.
So it's not necessarily that everyone that has a thyroid disorder will have depression or anxiety, but it's something that if the thyroid is off, it can worsen depression, worsen anxiety. Typically hypothyroidism is going to be more depression, hyperthyroid is going to be more anxiety. So, any other questions?
The whole area of cognitive behavioral therapy, that seems to be the trend or the methodology that's being used a lot now. I know it's also being used with insomnia. You feel pretty strongly that that's the type of therapy people should be looking for if they're going to try to find a provider?
Well, I think that we don't just do anything on a mass scale. So we put this information out there. Of course, this is new information and I was excited to share it and I have seen it work. But we look at you as an individual. So when you come in and we talk about what's going on with you, could I say that for everyone that's the right step? Certainly some of these therapies may not be as effective for some as it is for others. But I do think that it is, the studies are showing significant results in patients that are really getting relief from insomnia, depression, anxiety, and other issues. So we do recommend it, but obviously we take in the whole picture. So sometimes you maybe need a combination of therapies, medication, cognitive behavioral, and other. So it's not just quite that simple, but that was an excellent question. Anybody else? See if I can.
What type of carbohydrates are helpful?
And carbohydrates are helpful. We should probably repeat the question.
The question is what kind of carbohydrates are helpful. And in general, you know, you definitely want to have a balanced diet. So it's not necessarily that, you know, all carbohydrates are bad or there's certain ones that are necessarily better than others. It's just that you really want to balance those out. And typically whole wheat ones are going to be a little bit better for you, more so than kind of the white flours, white rices, those types of things, because typically those have more macronutrients, more fiber in them as well. So definitely that kind of answers your question on carbohydrates.
If no one else has any other questions, we'll invite Nan back up. You guys were really wonderful. Thank you so much for having us.